Now, he was, according to his contemporaries and followers, simply the greatest art critic of our time. The Australian writer and historian Robert Hughes has died at the age of 74 after a long illness. The eloquence of his prose and the brilliance of his wit have been compared to the likes of the 18th century satirist Jonathan Swift.
Confidence is granted to the less talented as a consolation prize. The new job of art is to sit on the wall and get more expensive.
Insofar as it ever was designed to accommodate a human bottom, that bottom is one of those platonic solids existing somewhere out in the ether in a world of ideal form, but never made flesh.
Was it criticism or was it literature? Whatever it was, it made Robert Hughes the most famous art critic in the world. Elegiac about art he loved and damning about the depths to which he believed modern art had fallen.
If ever a museum set up a building whose main function was to praise its own stature as an institution, this was it.
The art world questioned his journalistic credentials, but he answered his own critics with a TV series in the 1980s. The shock of the new about the history of modernism was seen by more than 25 million viewers.
History teaches us one certain thing, that critics, when they fish out the crystal ball and start trying to guess what the future will be, are almost invariably wrong. I don't think there's ever been such a rush towards insignificance in the name of the historical future as we've seen in the last 15 years.
Robert Hughes left Australia in the 1960s to pursue his career in Britain and America. But he never gave up his citizenship, and in 1987 wrote an international bestseller about his homeland, The Fatal Shore. And he continued to write until last year. There's no better epitaph than the elegance of his polemic.
In art, there is no progress, only fluctuations of intensity. So much of art has become a cruddy game for the self-aggrandizement of the rich and the ignorant.
Well, I'm joined now by Nancy Durrant, the arts commissioning editor for the Times newspaper. When you think about the fact that his TV series drew 25 million viewers, kind of audience that Channel 4 News can only dream of, it's no surprise that he became the most famous art critic. How did he do it?
Well, I think the thing that's most exciting, that was always most exciting about Robert Hughes was his writing. It was the way that he wrote, and he wrote that series, and it was just so accessible. Despite being incredibly learned, you know, he didn't wear his learning lightly. You know, he positioned himself as a heavyweight, but he could talk to anybody. You know, the way he wrote about art, it was probably the first thing I ever read about art that I really understood.
But there's an odd tension, isn't there, between the rarefied world of art criticism and the mass medium of TV. How did he kind of marry those two?
Well, there kind of shouldn't be, in a way, because actually it's not difficult to write about art in a way which is accessible, which is readable or listenable by anybody. It's just that actually quite a lot of people write about it very badly. There's a huge amount. He was a rarity because there's so much guff in art criticism and art theory, and in fact you don't need to write like that, but I think quite often people will hide behind ridiculous words that no one would use in real life just in order to mask the fact that they're sometimes a bit frightened of not seeming intellectual enough.
It was blunt to the point of being rude, wasn't he? I mean, coruscating. How did he get away with that?
Incredibly rude, but he got away with it because he was entertaining. You know, you have to, if you're going to communicate to the masses, and that was what he was passionate about, despite the fact that he was terribly learned and quite elitist in many ways. He was incredibly communicative. He wanted everyone to be able to read about and find out about art. And so that was what was really important.
He penned a poem about the art world based on Alexander Pope's Dunciad. I mean, no art blogger today would be capable of that, would they? I mean, is the age of art criticism, is that over now?
I wouldn't say the age of art criticism is over. I think that would be digging my own grave. But I think that certainly the sort of, I mean, one way you could call it democratisation or amateurisation of art criticism with blogs and Twitter and just the internet in general, it means that it sort of slightly undermines the need for that authoritative voice. But actually, I think we need it now more than ever, because with the sheer proliferation of images, we need a way to focus and to try and pick the wheat from the chaff. And I think that's even more difficult than it's ever been.
Over to you now, Nancy Durrant. Thanks very much.
Yeah, good luck.
That's all from here for tonight. So now back to Krishnan again at the Olympic Park.